The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Come own the night with us. Stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
It's Wednesday, December 27th, Thursday, December 28th if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night coming off the Christmas break. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North in the Caribou region on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, where it is snowing all over Spaced Out Radio headquarters. We got about a foot of the white stuff right now, and it is cold. Very cold. About 0 Fahrenheit, which makes it about minus 20 degrees Celsius. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, at over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on thefringe.fm, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Revolution Radio, which I'll get to in a moment, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on the Double R machine, remember it's a donation station financed by you, the valued listeners. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Now, we're all over social media, so you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a GoFundMe account going on right now. Join our campaign. We're trying to raise funds to improve our broadcast system. I'll get into more of that in a little bit. Head to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. Now, if you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, you can go right to the Spaced Out Radio store, pick up some swag, read up on the Encounter Online, dealing with everything paranormal, strange, and odd. You can check out my latest blog there as well. We also have great videos from UFO Seekers and Contact TV. Now, before I introduce tonight's guest, if you didn't catch what I stated on air last night when I popped on with Joe Roop filling in for me with Butch Witkowski, well, I'm going to fill you in again right now. Yesterday, we had one of the most important meetings in regards to this show, where I met with an old radio friend to discuss this show's potential future. I'm proud to say that as of mid to late January, we will be broadcasting on 5 terrestrial radio stations here in British Columbia. But before we make that happen, we need to upgrade our broadcast equipment, which is why we've been pushing people to help out via GoFundMe. So it's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. We are literally that close to breaking through, everyone. I encourage you to keep sharing the post. And if you're someone who has the ability to help out, once again, GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. I want to thank our most recent supporters, including my cousin Gary out of Edmonton, Alberta. I want to join and say thank you to Milo, Tanya, Joe, Thaddeus, on behalf of Christoph, Tripster, Ron, and Preacher for the latest donations. We're currently at $2,150, so we're almost halfway to our goal of $5,000. Keep the momentum going. And I want to say a big thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone, including my friends, my family, who are helping us own the night. It's really cool. It's really cool to watch. So if you could, I would appreciate it. If you don't have the means to participate, I'm okay with that. Do me a favor. Just share the post a couple of times. That will mean just as much to me. Now, tonight, Charles Banks is a good friend of this show. He and I pretty much got started in this field around the same time. And, you know, he's gone on to the way he does things. Charles is a very successful paranormal author. He has published 6 books, with his most recent, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, really catching the attention of ghost hunters and enthusiasts alike. Chuck is one of the most down-to-earth people you can meet in this field. He's a school teacher, a football referee when he's not playing in the paranormal. He's a dedicated family man who loves the role of husband, father, and now grandfather. So tonight, as we start to close out 2017, I figured it would be great to have Chuck back on the show to discuss the year that was in the paranormal. Let's face it, aren't we all sick of UFOs right now? The good, the bad, and the ugly of the paranormal, we're getting into it tonight. Chuck Banks, thanks so much for coming back on Spaced Out Radio. I hope you had just a wonderful Christmas.
Yeah, hey, Dave, I really appreciate you having me on the show again. This Christmas has been totally amazing, my friend. You know, having the grandbaby at home and, you know, taking some time off, you know, with my college coursework and you know, from teaching. It's always nice to recharge the batteries. And I have to reiterate what you said. Man, this UFO talk, it's crazy.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. You know, I'm going crazy with it. You know, you guys don't understand how much time behind the scenes people are hitting me up. Dave, what do you think? Dave, do you know any information about what's going on? I absolutely love it because to me, it's absolutely thrilling. It is totally thrilling, Chuck. And I'm not going to try and make this a UFO show, but you know what? I need a break as well. I totally need a break. So I am just kind of hanging out, doing my thing, and going to talk some ghosts with you. So we're going to get into a lot of good stuff tonight, my friend.
Absolutely. There are so many things that are that went on in 2017, and I'm going to say that there's a lot of listeners out there, you know, either my listeners or your listeners, Dave, that are going to agree with us. Good riddance, 2017. It's been one of those years that, you know, a lot of great things have happened, but man, has there been a lot of trauma and fighting and, you know what I mean, just intermingling to the negative. And I think that's important, you know, really to share with the listeners. There's so much conflict in the paranormal, and I don't understand why, you know, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, we're going to get heavily into that tonight, Chuck, and I just want to make sure that, you know, whatever we do, you know, we're not going to be picking on the paranormal tonight. I mean, I don't think that's fair. I mean, there was a lot of good people doing a lot of good work in 2017, but before we get too deep into that, for our audience members, because since the last time you were here, Chuck, we've literally grown about 140,000 people listening per night. So fill us in on how you got started going from school teacher to paranormal enthusiast and author.
You know, it really starts out, you know, I had a lot of experiences, you know, even when I was in high school, but really everything really kind of amped up after 2010. My father passed away April 30th, 2010. You know, and as a lot of your previous listeners that might have listened to the early show, and I'm sure there's a lot of new, but you know, I went out on a basically a limb because I wanted to communicate with my dad again. I had to have that feeling that he was around, and I opened up some doors, some doorways that I probably shouldn't have, and that's where the first 3 books, the Death of Saga, it really it really talks about my past experiences and those sorts of stuff. But I started teaching back in 2003. I got into coaching football right away as well, and that really it consumed my life for the first 7 for 7 years until my dad passed away in 2010. Well, then I started having those experiences, and I started to awaken. A lot of people with gifts, and I think we all have those gifts. It just varies in certain degrees, but it really woke me up into the spiritual realm of the paranormal in many ways, because I experienced so much darkness, and agony, before I was able to really seek up and get into the positive. And then in the last 3 years, I've started Death, the Final Frontier Paranormal here in Southeast Iowa. And I've also worked with several different paranormal groups throughout the Midwest, most notably Moth Ministers of the Haunted in Northern Iowa, and also Deep Heart out of Des Moines. And, I've been called in on several cases. And, to be perfectly honest, I couldn't be happier. It's one of those things, and it can consume you, though. The paranormal can consume you. And I've learned how to mix, my personal life, which is extremely busy with my, paranormal side of things, and things couldn't be better. It's one of those things where the sky's the limit. I started podcasting about the same time you did, and I'm going on, I don't know, my 200th episode or something like that, because we don't run 7 days a week, and I have to tip my hat to you, my friend. You've done an amazing job with the place, and looking around here, you know what I'm saying. You're doing amazing things, having amazing guests, and you're going places, and I couldn't be prouder to come on here and discuss kind of the end of the year.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, bud. I really do. Because, it's been a very hard push. It's been an emotional push. There's been, a lot of changes, a lot of learning experiences. And that's just on the on-air side, which I was used to from the radio side of my career. What I'm not used to is the whole business aspect of everything. So it's very, very tough in order to try and, make that balance, because when you're making a career or trying to make a potential career out of something, you got to have a lot fall on your plate. And it's got to fall perfectly, and it's got to fall right in line with absolutely everything. So we're trying, we're pushing. Some people love us, some people can't stand us, but that's the way it is when you're in a medium like we are. Isn't that the truth, Chuck? You and I have talked some very big war stories going back to when we started. People trying to take advantage of us and what we do, and it's not a pretty sight. When you're dealing with people who are looking for that next voice or that next, set of years. I remember, without bringing up names, you telling me a story long ago where this one person whom you were associated with was telling you were getting like 50, 60,000 listeners a show, and when you finally found out the truth, it was like less than 100.
Yeah. It just blows you away. I would, I'm under the, I kind of run my, my network on one of those things. We're pretty small time. You know what I mean? We're garnering different listening audiences, on a daily basis, and everything's growing and everything's going well, in accordance to me. But man, I just wish people would just be honest. Even if you come across as this arrogant ass or buffoon, just be honest with us. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. And you and I both look back at that situation and we're like, whew.
No, I know. And I had someone helping me out with the show during that time behind the scenes, where I actually, out of the goodness of my heart, paid their rent And 3 weeks later, she threw me under the bus and quit. You know, saying all of this heinous stuff. It's amazing how this field, for some reason, brings out the monsters in people. And yes, it is pun intended.
Yes, you know, there are a lot of shows out there, and a lot of shows, you know, starting on a yearly basis. But if you look at what you and I have accomplished, you know, we're still going. And you know, look at how many of those shows have ceased to exist, and a lot of those people that you know that really pushed the negative, you know, and negative connotation into all of this stuff, they're gone. You know what I mean? You don't hear from them anymore.
Chuck, do you still think that there is a little bit of an oversaturation of media when it comes to the paranormal? Because we see these new shows popping up all the time, but to me, I don't know how you feel, to me, it doesn't seem like they're as regenerating as fast on places like Spreaker or Mixler or Blog Talk Radio as they once were, say, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I look back at two and a half years ago, Dave, and it was crazy. I mean, there were, you know, all these shows, you know, popping up left and right, and those sorts of things. And I do know that, you know, there are a lot of, you know, starting up, you know, in the last 12 months that are doing pretty decent. But, you know, I go in and I listen to some of these shows, Dave, and I'm not going to dog anybody, but, you know, it's the quality of it. You know, people want to hear stories, but they also want some quality. They don't want the show to go in and out, you know, the volume to be bad and those sorts of things. And I think that's what really attracts people to your format, my man, because you are leading the way and trying to make this as crystal clear as possible. And, you know, I've always tried, you know, I always tried to open up different formats, and we do a pretty decent job at it. But, man, if you remember, you just go in and sit in some of these different podcasts, especially 2.5 years ago. And, you know, we all knew what was going to happen. I mean, you know what I'm saying.
In your opinion, then, what makes someone last? Because there is such a rotation of shows coming in and out.
I think the most important thing, you know, if somebody really wants to start up a podcast, is always try to change it up. You know, don't have the same stuff over and over and over. And I see that constantly. You know, there's a lot of them as well that they only have the quote unquote famous folks, you know, in the paranormal or in ufology or cryptozoology or whatever. And you know, a lot of times, you know, they're great to have on, but these folks have to. These folks have to be able to change, you know, their modus operandi when it comes to, you know, sharing the information. And truly, I think ultimately, if people come on our shows, and I can speak for you because I believe in what you're doing. You basically you let them tell their stories, and you don't roll your eyes. You don't look at those folks like, oh, this person's full of crap. You really allow them to tell their story. And I think with that type of a platform, that's where people are going to, you know, continuously come back because they know that you're real. You know what I'm saying? It's that realism approach to podcasting that I think really increases the longevity of anybody's podcast.
Well, you know what? The strength of the shows like yours and others will always rise to the top. They will always do that. And the one thing that I don't think a lot of people fully understand is how tough everything is. How tough it is to book guests. How tough it is to create a genre. Because a lot of the people out there, you know, as I have always said, there's a huge difference, Chuck, between creating radio and playing radio. Huge difference. And a lot of people cannot make that assumption or differentiate between the two. And, you know, it's not crapping on people who want the opportunity because, you know what, go for it. That's what this is about. If you're able to get answers for what you're doing, go for it. But know your limitations. Know what you're doing. follow the people who have gone through the hard times to learn from them, rather than just jumping on, your first radio network because you think some blog talk radio, website has a bunch of networks. I mean, I got approached again today by a guy starting a brand new network. And he was like, we'll broadcast you for free and everything. And I'm thinking about it. Do I or don't I? Because, we just had something very big happen yesterday for this show. Because being online really, as much as I love it, it isn't the goal of what we want to do. So there's all these different variables that now come into play. But for people out there who are just starting out, I do say go for it, but learn. Is it a hobby, or is it something you want to do long term?
For sure, and I think that's very important, to put into it. How much time, how much effort are you going to put into something that's going to be in cyberspace forever? You know what I'm saying? Because ultimately, you're putting your face in front of anything that you put out there. So, definitely do that, and also, be of a clear mind. Keep that ego out of it, because anytime the ego becomes involved, in anything that you do, it's gonna be your downfall. And I think that's kind of what I've done. I'm a nice guy. I'm a down to earth guy. I'm one of those guys that's had a plethora of experiences throughout my life. So you know what? Hey, I just like to experience that, and also love anybody that comes around. You know what I mean? Because they're the ones that are going to keep coming back every night.
Why do you think then, Chuck, there is so much, adversity when it comes to these programs? I mean, we have so many different networks out there. We have people claiming, going on Facebook Live, calling it a radio show, which I laugh at quite a bit. It does happen, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is, what happens when that show that say builds up to 100, 200 listeners after a couple of months pulls the plug? What happens to those listeners? Have you been able to find them?
It's one of those things that I've experienced over the years, Dave. You've known me a long time, and I've went for, I think 3 or 4 different networks, and at times I've taken as long as a month off, and it's hard to get back those listeners because they want you. They want to listen to your show, they want to listen to your guests, they want to hear your input, and a lot of times, like for me, I had no idea. When I was building up, I was getting 100, 125 listeners a night, and everything was really good. And then I'd take that time off, or I'd make that shift, and then, you'd only get half back. Now, I don't know. I've been able to get a lot of listeners from some of these blog talk radio networks that have went down, or have, had those guests that, basically are totally opinionated, or you know what I mean, like hosts that are totally opinionated, and they're only going to listen to what they're doing. And I'm getting some of those, but, it's just one of those things where it's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know for sure what's going to take place.
One of the things that we are trying to find is we're trying to find those listeners that are what we call orphan listeners, people who've given up on other programs but love this genre but just don't know where to turn. Then you have the secondary ones which bounce around the online networks but don't really stay awake this late at night, because you know what? For the most part of North America, we're on pretty late. People are already in bed, have gone to sleep. You know what I'm saying? So there is that problem. So how are you trying to attract listeners to what you're doing? Because you're someone who does a weekly show, or I think bi-weekly, pardon me, and you're someone who is in that same battle at an earlier time slot, trying to win people over from these so-called networks that are fly-by-night.
Yeah, and I really struggle. My shows run on Sunday evenings from 7 to 9 Central. We've been basically going nonstop every Sunday for the last I want to say about 12 weeks or so, and we took this past week out for the holiday. But it's difficult. I utilize social media much like you do, as much as I can, to get out that information. But really, it's one of those things where it's word of mouth. A person that may come in, like to listen to Andrea Perron, which by the way is an amazing person. And then they like your content, they like what you're about, and then they end up coming back a few times, and at that point, you can kind of hook them. I think it takes that, but it also takes the ability to basically have that cross functionality, like myself, with Beyond the Light Radio Network, we support Spaced Out Radio. You know what I mean? Spaced Out Radio supports all these other genres and folks, but I can see where that can get a bit ugly, because I know that you probably experienced what I have. Some of these networks, they get a little bit nervous. They feel like you're stomping on their turf. And what we try to do with our network is we try to schedule our shows and our show times around some of these other shows. Like Jim Mallard. I love that guy. All right. So I'm not going to have a radio show that's going to battle against him. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I think truly that's what it's all about. It's that cross-functionality and being able to work together. Because without us working together, we're not going to achieve our own goals.
And the goals have to be that message. The message of what is happening in the paranormal. And as we start to close in on 2017 and move into 2018, looking at 2017, what did you think of the year of the paranormal?
I'm sorry, Dave, you broke up just a little bit on that last question.
Well, what I'm asking, Chuck, is looking back at 2017, what did you like about the paranormal, about what happened, what people were investigating?
Well, I really enjoyed, the little guy this year. The smaller, paranormal groups and societies that are, making a name for themselves, and these real these feel-good stories, where these people, they're no longer petrified, to sleep in their homes. Their kids are able to do that, and I have to give a shout out to like Moth, to Depart, here in Iowa. But there's also all those other great stories. I mean, you had a guest on here this past week. Okay, he's a reverend. You know exactly who I'm talking about. And this guy breeds positivity. He prays for people. You know what I'm saying? It's people like that really deserve all the accolades, in 2017. Because without folks, that really push the positivity and the prayers and the light for all the people that need it, and they're not in it for necessarily the dollars. That's the feel-good story of 2017, in my opinion.
The one thing that I really liked about 2017 this year was I think we started to get away a lot from that anger that we saw in 2016. 2016 seemed to have a lot of anger in the field. People were going after people about their investigative techniques, insulting what kind of equipment they were using, trying to say what was and what wasn't evidence. And I really saw a difference in that this year. Did you see the same?
I did. 2017 was one of those years where, sure, there was some bickering and some animosity, at certain times during 2017, but you really didn't see, the negativity that you saw in 2016. Do you think that's because a lot of those YouTube series, or those YouTube shows that, people were doing all these ghost boxing segments and things have kind of petered out? Do you think that's why 2017 was a little bit better?
Well, I think the help of a lot of people leaving this field is what did it. We saw Steve Huff disappear. He was very controversial because he went after people like the Constantinos, who was a murder-suicide okay, in 2016, and he was trying to contact them literally hours after their death. He did that with a lot of stars. He raised a lot of ire in people in this field for not having any type of respect. And I think 2017 really focused on trying to bring that respect back. Yes, there's a lot of bad apples out there, Chuck, but I think people are starting to become, after 2017 going into 2018, to have an awareness of what is going on.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of groups out there. Somebody in particular, like Dan Class, the Hinsdale House. He's working on, trying to promote a little bit more unity as far as, hey, let's all work together. Let's put all of our investigations, all of our evidence together, and let's try to evaluate it. Things like that is what's going to change things. I mean, I don't believe that para-unity will ever happen, totally. But we can all come together, though, and realize that we're all in it for the same reason, and that's to basically look into evidence of an afterlife and to figure out what's harming folks and what's positive, and everyone can learn from those experiences and move forward.
But the chintzy arguments didn't seem to be there. You know what I'm saying? They didn't seem to be
Not
there.
as bad, no.
We weren't seeing the insults of, well, you shouldn't be using that piece of gear. It's a load of crap, and all of this type of argument that was there in 2016 that I noticed. This year, if we were to say what the argument was, I would say it had a lot to do with, people calling out people for their investigative techniques, which I don't think is a bad thing.
No, I think a little bit of clarity, being able to ask questions, without certain people getting upset, or thinking that you're dogging their investigative techniques is important. It's important for us to be able to analytically communicate positively, on all facets, because I would agree. 2017's been a lot better, and I'm hoping that 2018 is just going to be fantastic. As far as us being able to have those conversations, as long as we don't see those posts with like fake news and political ads, I think we'll be fine.
Do you think, though, that there was an increase in quality? How can we put this? In quality information and investigation that was brought forward? Do you think we were closer to solving anything?
Man, I think we're closer to unifying and being able to to not argue, but being able to discuss valid topics, being more open, to different spiritual approaches, not being so closed-minded. Do I think that we're anywhere closer? I think we got a hell of a lot further to go with it. You know what I'm saying? As far as being able to, coordinate and being able to prove, the afterlife or the, the other realms, beyond a shadow of a doubt. You look at the spiritual side of things, which, I handle quite a bit on the closet medium side. And, people are more open and not as close-minded when we look at spirituality and components and mediumship and all that sort of stuff. So I think things are getting better, but I think we got a long way to go.
What was the best piece of evidence that you saw this year?
Myself or out in the paranormal community
Both.
as a whole?
Both.
Okay. I experienced a couple things, this early April when I visited, it was a Southeast Iowa Metaphysical Fair, and there was a gal, and her mother. It was a 12-year-old girl, and I was able to get rid of and disband, a real nasty attachment. I won't say it's demonic, but it was very dark. And, being able to see her demeanor change, being able to see her now where she's able to play softball, she's able to play sports, she's able to go to school, she's able to sleep in her own bed, and she's now been baptized and all that sort of stuff. That's amazing to me, being able to see that. And, as far as the veil thing, I've seen it more often than not, especially over the past 3 months. where spirits coming through, a lot louder, a lot clearer in regards to that, with my mediumship abilities. Now, out in the paranormal community, you see it every day. They're coming up with different techniques. But I still think that at the end of the day, it comes down to you got to be open and understand that if spirit wants to come through, they're going to come through with any device. And I think that's extremely important when I look at that. As far as validation, out there in the community, I think that more and more folks are looking at shows like these. They're looking at real paranormal groups and not necessarily just the Hollywood version of the paranormal. And I think that that's important as well.
We also saw a lot of paranormal teams fold up this year, all over the place. So, I mean, mentioning names, it just wouldn't be prudent because, for the most part, we don't know a lot. But probably the biggest hit that happened in 2017 was the fact that the television show, Ghost Hunters, wasn't renewed by Sci-Fi after 13 years. What was your reaction when you heard that news?
Well, it's and I'm sure that it's similar to a lot of folks out there that they kind of watch that from year one. Things have changed. You look at the paranormal as a whole. It appears that maybe the interest has squandered a little bit. In the everyday person that's going to turn on the TV or whatever. And I think that the interest as far as on TV in that format anyway is squandered. And maybe that's because so many people are switching from mainstream media or the media or the TV and coming and listening to podcasts much like yours and mine because they want the real story. They don't want the Hollywood version. Everybody understands that most of what is shown on those TV shows are it's raw footage, but for whatever reason, and I'm not going to blame anybody that's involved or that's ever been on TV, but a lot of times they don't see it, after these bigger organizations have edited it. So, that's kind of my take on it.
Was it a loss for paranormal television?
Ghost Hunters, I think that once you start losing, shows, you eventually it picks up momentum. Is it a loss? There was a couple of videos out there, and I know that you've seen them as well, where they said that some of the things were staged. Now, if that's true, shame on anybody involved. But I think it is. It's going to be a hit, but it's also going to be, it's also going to leave the door open for maybe other stories or other type of shows, to come about. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% bought in on the, the TV show, paranormal enthusiast approach anyway. But that's my opinion.
I think for a lot of people, they were tired of, it wasn't so much the people involved, but they were tired that nothing ever seemed to get solved. You know what I'm saying? It was the same thing over and over again. The minute they were like, what was that? They would hear the music crank up and you couldn't hear what they were actually listening to. You know what I'm saying? And I found it very difficult near the end because it seemed like the shenanigans were more important than actually causing or finding evidence, where I think the people who were watching these shows, most people who were enthusiasts, but those who were investigators were like, show us something that you are doing. Show us something that you were trying to solve, because they never solved anything.
No, and that's I think that's a big reason why that myself or people like me get turned off by it, because I love the history and the verve, the story that's associated with it, and I also want their best evidence. I want to know what an SB7 or SB11 or these different ghost boxes and how they're made, and more explanations on that. And exactly what are you looking for? Because it seems to me, Dave, that pretty much every show that comes on, they're like, "Ooh, did you hear that?" You know what I'm saying? Or "Oh my God, it's a demon." Okay, not everything is a demon, and for you to see that over and over and over, I think that's where the saturation really kicks in.
Absolutely. And I think what people were waiting for with paranormal television is for something to happen. Example, Zach Bagans, love him or hate him, took a lot of heat this year for his Halloween special where he was asked not to touch the Annabelle doll, but he said, screw it, I'm going to touch it anyways.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were looking for the results of something that happened. Now, as far as we know, nothing has happened. But the fact that we are, looking for things to happen is where we need to be able to go with this. Do you not agree?
Yes, I would totally agree. It's kind of like I look at it like a NASCAR spectator. I mean, how many people are watching that? For the person in 13th place to pass the guy in first place, or are they watching it, before the next big wreck? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. Because let's face it, in paranormal television, for the most part, nothing is really solved. And then comes a point where there have been numerous shows, going back to Paranormal State with Ryan Buell, that were rigged, that were faked, that really played on people's emotions and fears, which to me is not very fair. But on the flip side, television isn't about fairness, it's about ratings. So I guess what I'm looking at is, in 2017, do you think that people are leaving paranormal television, watching paranormal television, that is, because they're tired of the same investigation? Because you can only investigate the same way so much without any type of solution.
Yeah, it's much like podcasting, or anything for that matter. If you're seeing the same thing over and over and over, and you're thinking by watching, the beginning or the 26th episode down the road that you're gonna experience something that you've never seen before, and and then nothing happens. I think that's what turns folks away. What they have to. I mean, it has to build upon something. Otherwise it makes it lackluster, non-meaningful, and truly what we want to do is we want the next big discoveries, right? That's what humankind's all about. We want to go to that next level. We want more knowledge.
And that's why I think so many people have turned towards the field of ufology now, Chuck, is because, especially recently, there has been steps forward. There has been progress, whereas in paranormal television, or in the paranormal realm in general, there is still huge debate on how to investigate, let alone trying to figure out what people are trying to solve, if anything.
Yes, and also you see a lot of negatives, on some of these TV shows, like talking to the spirits, in a negative connotation, or trying to bring them out, like, show me yourself, you demon, or whatever. I mean, for whatever reason, that kind of turns me away too, especially as a paranormal investigator, because you know what, we should treat the spirits in much the same way we would treat a normal person, because at the end of the day, that spirit was, potentially a normal person in the past, and they don't want to be treated like an asshole or anything like that.
No, and I fully agree with that. But I guess the way I look at it, if I were to see one big debate of 2017, Chuck, it would be, what are we investigating for? Now, this could take up 3, 4, 5 shows in a week, and we probably wouldn't even, scratch the surface on any of it, by having to delve into everything. But where I did notice 2017, it was the year of debate for how to investigate. Did you see that as well?
Yes, and the several folks that I've talked to over the course of the last 12 months, they all kind of come to that same connotation. You know, it's the do's and don'ts, and you see it all the time, you know, in pretty much everything. And, you know, I think that may be the biggest breakthrough of 2017 is that we're starting to come together with a list of things that, you know, we could try, or things that we might not want to try. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You know, here's one thing that I learned that I was actually quite shocked of is there are certain groups out there, you know, because everybody has to have an acronym of some sort. But there are certain groups out there where their entire goal is to go into someone's house or place of business to prove or disprove it's haunted. Now, where I get the head scratching on my end, my friend, is I sit here and wonder, you know, why would I call you, a paranormal team, to come in and prove or disprove if my place is haunted if I already know there's paranormal activity happening there? And once those groups come in and prove or disprove whether or not there's paranormal activity, I find it hilarious that they are leaving the people with no situation to figure out how to cure themselves of this entity or whatever phenomenon is going on. I don't like that about this field. I think it's rude.
It kind of sounds similar to, you know, the pharmaceutical industry that, you know, hey, you take this pill, but now you got to take it for the rest of your life, you know, where there's really no cure. You know what I'm saying? The human ingenuity that we've had, you know, throughout our entire existence, you know, we're supposed to be able to, you know, solve these problems and these issues. And a lot of these groups where I have the biggest issue, Dave, is where they go in and they don't check back with those folks. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of an ongoing thing.
I think it's hilarious, to be honest, and I mean that in a very sarcastic sort of way. You know, there's one group here in British Columbia, I can tell you. They do not allow the owners or the bosses into their place of residence during an investigation. They will not show any evidence because they don't feel they need to, because their job is to collect evidence for their team. They don't offer any solutions as to what to do, even though they're using techniques like provocation. They are, you know, not returning any phone calls from the client. I think these are all red flags. And I think what's happened in the field of the paranormal this year is we've actually started seeing other groups call those groups out and say, this isn't acceptable. This isn't the way investigation is supposed to be. And I think that's good for the field because the field is actually starting to police itself. Your thoughts? True.
And you know, another, and it's not really laughable, but it is kind of laughable. So I'll just throw this out there. You know, folks that say that, okay, we'll come and help you with your haunting situation for like $1,200. You know, and people are calling those people out too, which I think is important because they're, you know, if someone has a problem, why would a paranormal investigator want to charge them for services? You know what I'm saying? Something like that also drives me absolutely insane. And I kind of like the idea that you know, the people are policing themselves, because that's when things change. I mean, it's and it's sad, but it does take some peer pressure from some of these great individuals in the paranormal that need to speak up, because people look up to those folks, you know?
We also saw a lot of people calling out other teams that are not only making money on this, but are taking advantage of situations, whether it's museums or hotels being wrecked by paranormal groups, you know, or investigators going into situations drunk or high. We're starting to see people, you know, who are taking this field literally call out those people for what they are doing. And I know this goes back to what we just mentioned about policing, and the group really has to police itself. But in the end, is this a good thing? Or is this all leading, Chuck, towards, you have been saying it since you got into this, paranormal unity? I don't like to use the term paranormal unity, but I guess what I'm saying is this eventually going to lead to what we see in the field of ufology with MUFON, that eventually there is going to be some sort of paranormal code of conduct brought forward in the years to come?
I think I really don't have an issue with paranormal code of conduct, but you have to be mindful of that. Who's gonna police that? In regards to is it going to be these organizations, these conglomerates, and we could talk the Illuminati all day long. A lot of people would laugh with me even bringing up Illuminati, but you would have to make sure that we'd have to have an organization that is totally open-minded, and you can't have any closed-minded individuals within that. It would be difficult to pass that through. And I think it's going to be really difficult to pass that through until the paranormal is relevant, like any other science. I mean, once we have those breakthroughs, then things will change. But until that point, we're not an active science. So where do you go with it?
Why do you think, and this leads to Deb's comment at #SpaceOutRadio on Twitter, why do you think paranormal groups that charge are supposed to do it pro bono? Because that was one of the huge debates in 2017, investigating for free comparatively to investigating for profit.
Okay. I have a real hard time, with investigating for profit. Now, if a family, wants to swing some money for gas, or, wants to, put you up for the night, whatever, I'm totally good with that. But I really have a hard time, with that, in regard, because, I had an experience, where this family, the Midwest, all across the United States, people live in poverty all the time. This family was living in poverty, but this little girl was going through an extreme amount of, pain and disassociation with what was taking place. And this one person, I would never say their name, I would never say it out loud, was going to charge them $800. Well, one of their friends got a hold of me, and I went up and did it for free. And I drove 275 odd miles, to do it one way. And I did that because these folks can't afford that. You know what I'm saying? It's, I couldn't do it. I couldn't look myself in the eye if I didn't have the money, or vice versa, if you're going to put yourself in those shoes to do that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I have a real hard time with charging for paranormal investigation. And I have a real hard time saying that as well. Now, let me explain. I'm very pro-capitalist. I think people should make money off of whatever they possibly can. However, there is some rules that need to go along with that. And the problem with the paranormal is we have so many shysters out there who are trying to take advantage of people because the regular people who call in the investigation, they don't know. And how many times a year, Chuck, do we see people getting busted, whether it's ghost teams, whether it's psychics, getting busted for taking advantage of people? There was a lady in Washington State that we wrote about on the Encounter Online, a psychic, who bilked a lady for $50,000.
Yeah.
And then said, the only way I'm going to be able to get rid of this spirit is if you pay me more money. And that's the problem that we have with charging, is we can't, as a public who is very inferior with their paranormal knowledge, they can't judge what is actually happening and what's not. Therefore, how do you charge for something when you don't know if you've solved it or not? And how do you know?
Exactly.
And how do you know from the consumer side that you aren't being taken advantage of? But on the flip side, Chuck, I have no problem with people making money in this field, whether they're quality psychic mediums who do it the proper way, whether they're radio shows or radio operators or YouTube channels or authors like yourself. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to investigation, I really think that we need to, be very wary, because you don't know. You don't know.
And I think, our circle, if you look at the paranormal community as a whole, if someone in the paranormal community, they realize that there's a problem, well, it's pretty easy for us to get a hold of, a good medium, or, a good paranormal group, to come in and do those things. But, like you said, man, if you're going in blind, you don't have those resources. And yeah, it's amazing. It amazes me to no end, and I've had to, clean up maybe 3 or 4 really nasty goof ups when you look at the paranormal itself, and that's that's where the paranormal gets a bad name in a lot of ways, because there are so many great folks in the paranormal community that would be willing to give their shirt off their backs, to help somebody out, somebody in need. But it only takes 1 or 2 of those bad eggs, to ruin things for all of us.
Chuck, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are going to step out for our first commercial break of the night. Chuck Banks is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His latest book, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, highly popular. It's rated 5 stars on Amazon right now. I highly suggest you go over to Amazon, you pick up a copy of this book, and hell, if you get a hold of Chuck on Facebook, I'm pretty sure he would even autograph a copy for you. What's better than an autographed copy of a book? Especially if you're a reader. None of this Kindle stuff, but an actual book reader like I am. I refuse to go to the Kindle way. We're going to be talking paranormal all night long as Chuck is with us for the duration. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back.
Hey, space travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every 3rd Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. at spacedoutradio.com. The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter the Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our Advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, I highly suggest you tune this one in. Laura Johnson Cole is going to join us. You may not know her name, but she was one of the few survivors of the Jonestown Massacre in 1978. Yeah, the Jonestown Massacre. That's what we're talking about tomorrow night. She drank the Kool-Aid. And she survived. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Terrasonant is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can join us for live chat on Facebook in the SOR Space Travelers group. We're on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel where we store our archives is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We are on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including reading up on the encounter online, shopping at our Spaced Out Radio store, rocking out to some Bumblefoot. You can also watch great videos from UFO Seekers and Contact TV and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking with paranormal author Chuck Banks, Charles Banks, whatever you want to call him. His latest book, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, we're going to get into momentarily. It's ranked 5 stars on Amazon right now, so I highly suggest you go on over there, pick it up, and if you're lucky, Chuck will even autograph it for you. Why not? That's kind of the fun of it. Chuck, welcome back to SOR.
Hey, excited to be here. Round hour number 2. Man, we're and it's flying by, my friend.
It always does. It always does when you're having fun. So what's the New Year's plans this year? You and the wife going to celebrate, or are you staying on in?
Well, I think I'm going to do a New Year's Eve special. In the early evening, and then I think I'm going to take my wife out. I haven't done that for a while, so, maybe that'll be exciting, to get out and, maybe shake a leg even. That's the sky's the limit this year, and 2018, I can't wait for you. I got my big arms, and I'm going to bear hug you, and I'm going to kiss you all the way into there, so I'm excited.
Well, if you tell me to pucker up if I'm there, I just might. You never know. We're actually
just
doing.
Make sure it's the right side.
Perfect. We're actually going for dinner over at a friend's house, and then my wife at the resort she works at, she has to work from 8 o'clock in the evening until 2 in the morning. So it's just going to be me and the little guy, and he'll be down by about 9:30. So I'm going to be working on the show. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be working on the show in behind the scenes, maybe play some online poker. It's going to be pretty sedated for me this year, but that's okay. I got my little guy, and I'm okay with that. I really am okay with that. So, New Year's has never really been a big one for me, so I'm just going to chill out, relax, and enjoy a nice quiet night alone with me and the big guy.
Nice. There's nothing like that, is it? Where you can spend some quality time with your little ones, because man, they grow up so fast.
Well, I couldn't imagine being a grandparent like you are. I couldn't imagine that right now.
I saw the my son-in-law Donald and my daughter Chelsea and Orion. They packed up this morning and they left. And I'm not going to lie to you. Part of me was like, I had a tear in my eye, but part of me was like, whew, now I can go back to normal a little bit.
Yeah, my dad was the same way, and my dad is 68. He is very addicted to my son. Very addicted. They're like best friends, those two. And, when Grandpa is around, I don't exist, neither does Mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's the funniest thing, because my dad just kills himself laughing. But, you know, to watch my dad cry, because my parents live about 250 miles away from us. So to watch my dad cry when we have to pull out of the driveway, you know, because it's going to be probably months before he sees the little guy again, you know, I feel for him. I really do. But you know what? I keep telling my parents, move on up. Move on up. Lots of room here. You know, we'd love to have you move on up here, but they just won't, because my mother's stubborn. But that's okay.
Yeah, I don't see Grandma and Grandpa moving to where they're at, because they end up getting stationed. They get stationed in different places about every 2 years. So I have to be careful about that.
Military family.
Absolutely. He's my grandson will be a military brat. You know, I'm a veteran as well. So, but you know, I'll send out lots of warm, embracing, healing, and clarity for all the veterans out there, not only in the United States but across the world.
Speaking of across the world, looking in our Spreaker chat room right now, we have a gentleman named Pal Nolf. He is listening in for the first time from Sweden, saying Happy New Year, Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much. All the way from Sweden. That is amazing. Thank you so much for tuning us in tonight, listening to Chuck Banks here. So I really appreciate that, pal. Really appreciate that. Or maybe it's Paul. I apologize. Probably Paul. So thank you for listening in.
Now, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dave. Does that make us internationally known?
I guess it would. We're growing, man. We are growing.
Yeah.
You know, we are growing. We're getting on out there. Spreading the love. Spreading the love. But that's okay. We're good for it. I'm good for it if you are.
Absolutely. Let's roll.
Speaking of which, you mentioned that your grandson is going to turn into a military brat. You are a veteran yourself. Your son-in-law is in the military, and thank you guys for your service. Why do we see so many ex-military individuals, retired or not, hopping into investigating the paranormal?
Man, you know, that's it's interesting that you say that, because there are a ton of veterans that are associated in the paranormal. Not only veterans, you know, with the armed services, but also those in law enforcement, EMT, firemen and firewomen. Or, you know, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anyway, it is interesting, that takes the cake. I mean, we're talking about, you know, the most normal of folks getting involved in that. And, you know, many people would say that, maybe paranormal or spirituality would be more liberal, but, you know, I see it kind of as the opposite, because there's a lot of conservatives that are in the military. I mean, I don't know. I won't get into the political debates and all that sort of stuff, but that is interesting.
Do you think military people bring a certain aspect to the field?
I think they definitely bring a foundation, you know, that certain, it makes it more credible. Don't you agree?
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out from you is, you know, you are ex-military. You know a lot of ex-military or current military people who are involved in the paranormal. Why do you think that is? Is it the structure? Is it the way to investigate? Is it like being, you know, and I hate to use this term and I'm saying it out of naivety, but is it like being on the battlefield where you're really battling unknown elements?
You know, that's I've never heard it quite like that, but battling, being able to try to change the world, you know, for the positive. That's why I got in the military. That's why my daughter and son-in-law are in the military. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's that ability to change the world and serve. So yeah, it's that aspect of service. You know, so you're constantly serving. Not only your inner needs, but also the needs of others. That's interesting.
Is it the camaraderie that goes around with it? Because you're using gear, once again. You know, it might not be for a malicious nature or killing nature, but you're using a bunch of gear. You are setting up stations, you're setting up, hotspot areas. Do you think that's what really it involves when it comes to the military? Because it can be, if done correctly, very structured.
Yeah, setting a plan, setting a, I wouldn't necessarily, well, it kind of is. It's kind of like because you are battling, the elements, whether it be spirituality or whatever. So, I see where that could relate. Now, I'm also seeing a potential 7th book there, Dave. Yeah, do you want to write it with me?
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Let's do it.
Let's hammer that baby out. And also, even in the world of the of the UFOs or aliens, there are a lot of ex-military involved in those as well. So I'm going to guess, I don't know. I look back at my military days, and most of the time I was pushing paper. But when you go through the training, whether it be basic training and then tech training or whatever, you do learn kind of the ways of investigating. So I could see where there would be a relationship there.
I say we go for it. I do.
Let's do it.
I'm fine with that. We'll talk after the show. We can't let the people know. We can't let the people know about our plan here.
Can't tell them all the ideas.
Exactly. But I think it'd be a good topic. So let's do it. Anyways, let's move on here to mainstream popularity with the paranormal. Do you think we are becoming more accepted by the mainstream right now? Maybe not so much on the ghostly side or the cryptid side like Bigfoot, but on the ufology side, people now, over the last couple of weeks, seem to be waking up.
I think I saw I can't remember where I got this. So no one, and I'm not putting out fake news because I do remember reading it, where they said that 62% of Americans, believe in the existence of extraterrestrials or UFOs. So if 60%, believe in that, I can see where the popularity and, the things could really explode. And, as far as seeing, believing in ghosts or, the paranormal, I think that it was as high as 40% on a lot of these polls. And I think it was a Gallup poll, Dave. So I'll have to double check my resources. But, that's pretty high. If you look back when you and I were running around chasing skirts and, driving our vehicles in high school, if you were to bring it up, people would look at you like you're going to hell. You know what I'm saying? It's a total shift.
Absolutely, it could be. But do you think it's about time that people start opening up their minds? And if it starts with UFOs in the mainstream and the mainstream media is starting to take this seriously, do you think that's a benefit for every community in this field?
I do. And it kind of starts out, like, the Pope. I think the Pope even mentioned something about, some type of disclosure. Now, I can't remember for sure. Again, I don't have the source with me, but I do read a ton of stuff, and a lot of times it sinks in. I don't understand why, but I do. But I believe that the more that the folks that kind of run a lot of the things that are taking place, the more open they are, because people are thirsty. People want to know what the heck's going on. What's coming down the hatch? What's going on? We want to know if we've been in contact with with an alien race since 1947 or 46 or whatever. We want to know those things, but so that's kind of opening that up, a tad. But I do think you either like him or love him. But someone like Donald Trump's not going to try to hide these things. He's not going to try to to force it up. He's not tied in with the Illuminati, or at least I don't think he is.
So do you think that with the ability to the mainstream to start thinking about these topics a little bit more serious, how do you see it shifting towards benefiting the ghost crowd as well as, say, the cryptid crowd. Because, let's face it, a lot of hauntings, unless it's Halloween, don't get any airplay on television in the mainstream news. And realistically, we don't know what is real or fake in the cryptid world anymore because there's so much hoaxing going on.
You know, I see more on the local news here in Iowa. We have several different newscasts and in the papers. There's a lot more talk about Bigfoot. And, you know, just bringing up Bigfoot for a minute, even my wife to bring up, why are all these newscasts and these newspapers, you know, why are they all of a sudden interested in Bigfoot? And I'm not exactly sure how to take that, because my wife, Dave, is the biggest skeptic of them all in many regards. Even a lot of the stuff that I do, you know, she's very skeptic, and I love that about her. But it is becoming a little bit more open, even with that type of genre, because people really want to know. You know, when you know, the curiosity is going to kill the cat one of these days, and we're going to find out some things that they're going to, you know, it's going to set the world on fire. You know, when it comes to those topics. Now, the paranormal, again, we really only hear about them in a same connotation, you know, around a Halloween or like winter solstice or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it's so much different, but it is.
Do you believe then that there is a tie-in to all three communities, cryptids, ghosts, and UFOs, that eventually people are going to start investigating, which could bring a whole different genre of people looking into the realm of the paranormal as one giant family, which also helps in the mainstream media?
I think that there's a real possibility there. I mean, you know, we both had several guests on that, you know, they discussed this demonic or dark nature or whatever, and, you know, with some of these cases, you know, are they actually you know, different species of aliens? You know what I'm saying? Interdimensional beings. I hear that all the time. You know, and a lot of times, you know, like Bigfoot or different cryptids. You know, a Dogman. All of those sorts of things. Are they interdimensional? And if we can tie them together, it would strengthen all three. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree with that totally. I fully agree with what you're saying on that. However, you know, when it comes to anything, when the minute you open up your mouth about being interdimensional or being a shapeshifter or something along those lines, it sets a lot of people off. Those who believe they are conducting true scientific research call it woo-woo. I'm sure you've had that on your program as well. So,
sure.
So let me figure out what you are thinking about that, because there are a lot of people out there, Chuck, who really don't want to investigate any part of any type of supernatural ability by these what's the word I'm looking for? By these groups or these so-called scientists who don't seem to have a scientific degree. You know, and they are sitting there, you know, saying that we can't look at that stuff. We can't look at the supernatural. That's not scientific. It's not provable. Yet they're basing their own facts on opinion and not the experiences people are having, which to me doesn't seem very scientific.
You know, true. You know, you look at CERN, you know, in Europe, and you look at the aspect of antimatter and all these things that we would have considered science fiction. You know what I mean? You know, even 10 years ago, and a lot of things that are taking place. I do think that there are folks out there that are taking it a little bit more seriously. You know, the science and the spiritual approach, but not enough. You know what I mean? There's still that dogmatic approach to oh my goodness, you know what I mean? There's no way that you could have any form of spirituality or anything, you know, related with this. There has to be a scientific, you know, explanation. And, we could talk about, these near-death experiences and the process of the afterlife for probably 10 to 15 shows. But something like that, when you consistently see similar stories being told, wouldn't that make it more scientific? As far as, hey, okay, this situation happened with this person. This person had this form of, of religion or whatever, their belief systems, and you put it together. I mean, that's scientific research. That's scientific data collection. I don't really see the difference.
I don't see the difference either, but, the fact that we are, and there are so many in this field that continue, and this would be one of my pet peeves of 2017, is we've seen a lot of people try and translate their personal opinion as scientific fact. To me, that's dangerous for this field, and a big reason why we can't take this credible. But on the flip side, when we have people running around saying Sasquatch are people too, you know what I'm saying? It absolutely blows the mind of anything that we are talking about. So if they're people, should they have the right to vote? If they're in the United States, do they fall under the Second Amendment? We should allow Sasquatch or Dogman to bear arms? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we laugh at it, and I say that in jest, but the whole point being is, at some point, we have to, as a community, be able to call BS on that, because when the mainstream looks at us and they see people saying, Sasquatch are people too, we need to give them everything that they want and need in order to protect, no, they're not. No, they're not. We don't know what they are. We don't know if they're Gigantopithecus. We don't know if they're a supernatural being. So let's stop playing that game and try and collaborate all of our information that we have learned to draw some sort of scientific conclusion. Yet we don't want to do that. We want to work our opinion to the bone and not have anybody else interrupt that.
Yeah. I mean, it's truly ludicrous. When you look at some of the closed-mindedness or those types of approaches. And again, it's kind of like politics. Some people are so set in their ways and stuck with who they are that, you might as well argue with the wall. And it's one of those things. I'm kind of laughing at your chat because there's a lot of Bigfoot talk in there, but Bigfoot lives matter and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, it's interesting.
Well, I mean, the fact is, there are a lot of opinions on that. Whether people are having fun, whether people are serious about it, we don't know what they are. We don't know what they are. And the fact is, like, I had someone, and I'm not going to say who it is, I was going to hold a paranormal conference up here, and I asked this one person who's a very good, very strong Sasquatch researcher. I said, do you want to come up and speak about Sasquatch? And this was before I canceled the event due to the forest fires. And he's like, well, before I say yes, I need to know, is this one of those woo-woo type events where people are going to be talking all this crazy crap that isn't scientific? And I went,
what?
Yes. And I went, maybe, I said, what's woo-woo? And he goes, like all this supernatural, interdimensional crap that people claim is, out there and doesn't exist. And, it's just a bunch of, BS. And I went, well, hold on a second here. I said, what are you doing that's scientific? I said, have you disproven it or do you just not believe it?
Wow.
And I said, well, he's like, well, I don't really believe it. I said, well, so you're not investigating it scientifically then. And so we had that discussion, and I was still going to bring him up to do it. But I thought, you know what? I can tell you this. I'm not going to have you back on the show.
Exactly.
If you're going to insult people because their ideas are not the same as yours, I think that's rude. But I'll probably end up having him back on the show at some point, but because I flip-flop like that at times.
I think that's the biggest problem is, where you're closed off, where you're not truly, learning new, new strategies or new, new aspects or components of things, because, you know, at the end of the day, we are all searching for answers and clarity. And I don't know about you, Dave, but I don't know who Sasquatch is. You know what I mean? I can't give you beyond a reasonable doubt, you know, whether or not, you know what I'm saying, any of those facets. So, but I can tell you that I've had some pretty hellaciously crazy experiences with different things.
Tell us about some of your experiences as we start to lead into your book, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip.
You know, one of the craziest experiences that I ever had, and I think I told this on our previous broadcast, but it's a good story. It was our second family location. We actually moved from Centerville, and I had some experiences in Centerville, but this one in particularly is an apartment that's located about 4 to 5 blocks away from the Iowa State Penitentiary, where they used to hang prisoners. And my daughters, both of them, my youngest and my oldest, they were complaining about a man at the end of the bed. Well, I as a father, there was one night, my oldest was terrified, and I said, you know what, I'm going to stand up to this SOB, and we're going to go down. And she says, Dad, I've projected, and he's down in the basement. So we went down there, and I called this sucker out. This was before that, this was before I had any inkling that I had any abilities. This was before I had really any inkling, that I was going to investigate the paranormal. And I said, show yourself. So I used provocation, which I shouldn't have. And my daughter immediately went rigid. Her eyes changed. They were almost all the way dilated, almost black. She pointed at me, Dave, and said, "Get out." Well, immediately I knew that an entity had taken over her body. I stuck my hand on her head. I recited the Lord's Prayer, because that's the only thing that I could remember at that point. And I demanded this thing leave my daughter and my family alone. And she went immediately limp. And, her boyfriend and I kind of carried her up the stairs, and she still does not remember this situation. But I can tell you that the stench, the foul odors, the experiences, the electricity that was in the air down there was very dark. And it was one of my first experiences of being able to pull an entity out of a person that was my own daughter. So that was one experience that I look back on, and I'm like, oh, I can't even believe, it's one of those things that, that I experienced, and I look back and it's kind of like watching myself on tape, going back to those sorts of things.
Did you ever have encounters like that before, or was this the first time?
I did have encounters like that before, and when I started writing my book, a lot of times when you stir up those emotions, those things that kind of aren't at the forefront of your life at that point. I remember, playing a Ouija board in my parents' A-frame house just south of Centerville. And we actually went to a different spot and played it. A good friend of mine, I'll just call her Hawk. She's been kind of a teacher of mine, when you look at spirituality in general. And she touched me when I got back, and she says, "You have to burn that Ouija board." So we did, under their Lakota fashion. And my buddy Rob Vandermark still remembers a green plume of smoke come out of that Ouija board. Well, we visited Mendota, Missouri. We had to have been, I don't know, 16, maybe early 17 years old. And we were at this place, and it was about dusk, and I saw this being running at us. And I looked at Rob, and he looked at me, and we both were as pale as a white sheet. We jumped in the car and got out of there. And I was like, "Did you see that?" And he's like, "Did you see that?" And we were totally amazed. So I have had, different experiences like that, where the fear really got the best of me, especially when I was younger. But really nothing would hold a candle as to, after 2010, when I was trying to reach my dad, and whatever door I opened up at that point, it was pretty nasty. And if you can remember, during our first broadcast, my spirits even said hello to you.
I do remember that. So how long ago did you then start investigating your own spirituality in learning about your own abilities? When did you start feeling that was something you needed to do?
It's interesting because I've had 3 points in my life. I kind of break it up, but 3 points in my life growing up, either as an adolescent or an early adult, where I felt that I was called to preach the gospel, and every time, for whatever reason, I turned my back at it. And I would say from 1994 to about 2010, I really paid the spirituality component no mind. It's like I closed it off. It was like it never happened. And then, I thought that I had spiritual attachment, because of all these issues that were happening to my family, to myself, scratched, bitten, pushed, even lost time, at one point. And I met some great folks. Candy Orton's one of them. Katrina Gamzee, Kenny Addison, Coyote Chris Sutton, and through those folks, they said, "Hey, man, you're gifted. You know that, right?" And I'm like, whatever. I'm a football coach, and I'm scared the hell out of these ghosts that happen to visit me at the end of my bed, or or they're in my basement, whatever. Well, I started working with that. I started meditating. I stopped looking for a religion and found a spiritual component to life. And that's when my eyes truly opened. That's when I was getting visitations, from my guardian angels and the archangels and that sort of stuff. And that's when things started to open up. And then, then all of a sudden I'm talking to people, and I know shit that I shouldn't know. And they're like, "Well, how did you know that?" I'm like, "Well, whatever." And then lo and behold, as I've been able to rein that in a little bit with my teachers, like with Hawk and Candy and the like, it's given me a sense of clarity. I'm not saying that it's an easy road, because it's a real pain in the butt. I'm trying not to cuss on the air for you here. Because my basement, I had portals in the basement, Dave, that still are active. And, this is my first radio show that I've went past 12:30 in the basement. So who the hell knows what's going to go on in the last 90 minutes.
So do you still find activity following you all over the place?
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing to look at it is it's a learning experience, but also, for whatever reason, Dave, I get visitations of my clients that will show up either a day, week, sometimes a month later, and I know exactly why that took place. But the scariest thing is that the three darkest cases that I've had to deal with in the last 3 years have been associated with the same type of entity, and the same type of entity that affected not only myself but my family as well. And so I would say, as far as clarity, I'm constantly searching about, this spiritual component to be able to ease not only myself and be able to protect myself, but also to protect my family and friends from this thing. Because I had one moment where I had a really great friend of mine that tried to help him, was almost killed in the process. So I take it real seriously.
Do you consider yourself full-fledged psychic now, or do you consider yourself intuitive?
Oh, I consider I have the ability to heal. I'm an empath. Would I call myself a psychic? Probably more mediumship as far as a physical medium. I would consider myself probably more intuitive than I would psychic. If that makes any sense.
For people who may not know the difference, could you explain that?
Well, it's you know what, it would be very similar, but a medium is able to channel the spirit, channel a certain spirit that you're dealing with in that perspective. Intuitiveness, I see more along the lines of just being able to know things, or like sometimes when the phone rings, I know exactly who's on the line, especially if it's a stressful situation. And I'm able to know that. Being psychic is being able to predict, to being able to make predictions, or to being able to understand certain components of a situation. Like being able to touch. Yeah, and that's more intuitive, is touching things. So I don't know. I think it's definitely a mixed bag, but I'm constantly searching for ways to garner my certain abilities, which I think is important. You never truly stop learning.
Where do you consider yourself now? Are you still in the learning phase, or do you trust your abilities enough now to help people?
It's one of those things where when I'm really zoned in, I can help people. Certain cases, being able to help with attachments, and being able to heal folks that are under psychic attack. I feel pretty strongly with that, but I would say that I have a long way to go and a lot to learn in order to be able to really hone in the intuitiveness. And I think that's probably because I doubt myself quite a bit. I'm not one of those guys that that's going to tell you that I have all the answers, because I don't. I'm constantly learning, but there are times that I even amaze myself, when I have a session with folks out there, but it definitely can't tear you up.
How do you know you're getting the right information? Because a lot of people out there, Chuck, don't fully comprehend, and I'll be honest with you, I'm one of them. Okay, there's stuff I know. Like, give you an example, my good friend Carrie, who helps me out with my ghost hunts, the other night, I was messaging her, and I said, you better check your game cameras around your house, because she lives in the boonies. I said, I'm getting the energy of a cougar around your house. And she gets a hold of me a couple of days later, actually about a week later, to be honest, and said, you're not going to believe what I just found on my game cameras when I checked them. And there was a cougar in the yard, which is rare. She's more used to moose, more used to, deer, things like that, foxes, not cougars. But you just picked up on the energy. And a lot of people don't understand how that works. Even I don't. And it bugs me when I can't figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely, it's like that. I did a big event up at Farrar, and there was 160 people there. I call that a big event because I don't like doing the huge events, and a lot of people think that that I'm like John Edwards or someone like that, and they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, do you see my Aunt Margaret behind me?" And I'm like, "No, because I'm the type of person that wants to go in cold on any of this. I don't want birth dates. I don't want to know, what I mean? I'm going to give you yes, no comments and stuff like that, which I think is extremely important. What I've noticed though, Dave, is the more grounded that I've become with my chakra awareness, the easier it is to trust my guides. The easier it is to trust, the archangels. That what you're going to, come about in whether it be a reading, a healing, or whether or not you're going to be in an investigative situation. And I've learned to trust them. But I tell you what, sometimes when things are coming through, I'm like, really? You really want me to say that? You know what I mean? And then I say it, and then they're like, well, how the hell did you know that? And stuff like that. And I'm like, again, it's that aspect where you trust yourself, and being able to ground yourself through that chakra system. And that's what works for me. And, but then again, it won't work for everybody. You have to find your own method, in my opinion.
Well, I can tell you this. I had a situation just over a year ago where a friend of mine passed away. And he came to me literally hours after he died. And it was one of the weirdest things I've had happen, Chuck. And, you know, without going into all the details of everything, I had members of his family contact me to see if I could confirm some things. I was able to confirm before they got the autopsy that he did die from a heart attack. He had been known to use narcotics like cocaine in the past. However, there was nothing in his system, which I accurately described as well. And you know, there was just a lot of the situation. There was a couple of situations that I didn't get into. I didn't feel comfortable telling his family that, you know, an hour beforehand that he withdrew the money, that he went to a brothel. I knew that he had done that. But I didn't have the guts to tell them. I had another friend confirm that with me. And that the other thing was, you know, I didn't want his twin brother to know, because his twin brother is, lack of a better term, you know, driving on about 3 flat tires, to be polite. And when I started feeding the family the information that I was getting, it's amazing. They were like, can you just tell us, let us know when you get more? So I did. And the fatal mistake that I made on it was I told the family in communication that he wanted a place at the table the first Christmas that he was gone. And that he wanted a Budweiser beer, because he loved his Budweiser beer. He wanted a Budweiser beer sitting at the table in his spot. Well, a few days later, I get a call from the twin brother, and that he's threatening to come up here and literally harm me bad.
Ooh.
And I had to calm him down. I ended up losing 2 of my best friends, 3 of them actually, over this, because all of a sudden what they thought was really, you know, Dave has all these cool experiences. Now all of a sudden, because it was personal, I was, I was the enemy now. You know what I'm saying? So we get those situations where I can tell you right now, I really am uncomfortable even delving into that type of situation anymore, because I really do not want the hassle anymore. I can't handle it. I've got too much going on rather than losing more friends because I called something accurately.
Yes. And I've had similar experiences, and you know, it's definitely the negative portion of it, and I think that's why, you know, anytime that I do my readings, Dave, is I do it through a healing segment too. So you know, I'm going through the chakra systems. You know what I mean. I have a certain mode as if I'm doing that, and then, you know, then I share that information, you know, as we go through that. But yeah, there was one situation where I told, you know, I just, you know, I brought it out, you know, with the spirit. I says, you know, your boyfriend's beating you up. You know, he's abusing drugs, and they ended up breaking up, which was good for her, but it was bad for me because the boyfriend wanted to kick my butt. You know what I mean? But yeah, there are some times that spirit comes through just totally clear. And sometimes, you know, and what I've noticed, though, man, is if I hold back and I don't share some of the information I'm supposed to, that the spirit has a way of kicking me in the proverbial ball sack. You know, no pun intended.
No, I understand that. But, you know, it's a dilemma that a lot of us have to face. A lot of people who are into this. And I know that after that situation, that even when things have come to me, I've found it easier just to shut up about it. It's not worth the time anymore. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who has had to make that decision.
You know, you're right on. I mean, I've I've probably only done, 5 readings, this past year because of that. You know what I'm saying? Because it takes a toll on, it takes a toll on you. And sometimes it's very tough. And sometimes it scares the crap out of you.
I was going to get to your book this hour, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, which can be found on Amazon. But I don't want to start it this hour, so we'll get into it next hour, okay? Because I just think, getting into it and then having to go to break, Chuck, is just going to, kill the mood. And we want to make sure that we talk about it because it is an interesting story nonetheless in regards to it. But let's stick with your intuitiveness until we get to the top of the hour. So do you feel confident then in helping people out with your intuition? Because that's a big step.
It's one of those things that I've had to really work on over the past 18 months or so, because at the beginning, I was extremely confident. Maybe that was a little ego that built in there. But as I went, the more I started to, not to really have that, what do you call it, the confidence, to get over the hump with some of those things. And it might be because of, certain situations where, I've said things and then people are like, oh my God, how the F did you know that? And I was like, it's through spirit. It's through my higher self. It's, it comes that route. But, it's, it's that self-doubt. I would say that, anytime that there's a situation where somebody's being, harmed, spiritually speaking, when you look at the component in the investigative manner, I can get it done. For whatever reason, I've been a part of about, 18 to 20 cases, where I've been able to be real successful as far as taking care of a particular situation and allowing, the family to get back to normal. And that makes me feel good. When I'm in a pinch and you know what I mean, when it gets real, I can really act. I can act upon my abilities. But if you look at the average, like readings, like if I was to, do readings, and get paid for them, I don't feel as confident with that. And I don't know why, but, I've always had great readings, but I'm not as confident in that situation. I'm more confident when I'm going head to head with something that's something negative. And I don't know why I'm drawn to the negative side of things. I don't know why, but I keep getting cases, Dave, that are more drawn to the darker aspects or components of the paranormal.
Well, I think it's because, Chuck, people can trust you. You're one, like I said off the top of the show, you're one of the good guys. And it is very much the same with a lot of people in this field, that people who need help, they want to find those good people to work with. So that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And, there's a lot of things that I could put on paper, some of my experiences through that I won't, for confidential purposes, obviously. But, some of those experiences have definitely been pretty extreme. I had a situation, like I said, working with this 12-year-old girl. And, I got the vision, Dave, that, if we were to try to remove the spirit from her, that she would die. So, grudgingly, or actually non-grudgingly, I took that spirit out of her body and into mine. And it was taken out by a necromancer, a good friend of mine. And, we were able to clear that out, but it affected my health. It affected my sleep. It affected my personality for several months after that situation. And I would never recommend in a million years any psychic medium ever doing that. But at that point, I felt that it was the thing that I needed to do. And, and again, I think it's because I've experienced, such dark, this dark realm of the spiritual component. I don't know why. because I am genuinely, of the light, and I'll say that with total confidence. I know who I am spiritually speaking, but it seems like I always have to battle that darkness, and it's like a never-ending rerun of Groundhog's Day. But I am there to help anybody that needs it.
I think we all are, and the message is the medium. Whether it's in the media or whether it's intuitively speaking, it all comes down to, Chuck, as we got about a minute and a half left here before we got to go to break, it all comes down to gaining that ability to have people trust you, and the fact that they trust that you're going to give them the proper knowledge as well to the best of your ability.
Yeah, and that's important. I trust a lot of people, and sometimes my wife would say that I'm far too trusting in many regards. But yeah, that's I can see where that would hit. I'm definitely out there to help anybody that needs it, and as well as I do that if you were in a dark place, I'd be there for you in a snap.
Well, I think we all would. I think we absolutely all would. And the one thing that we need to, remind ourselves every now and again, Chuck, is that it is okay to ask for help, but, if you're going into this field, be vigilant with whom you're searching out the help from.
For sure. Anytime that, somebody contacts me, I always think, would I allow them in my basement to investigate my, what I'm saying, my potential situation and with my family involved. I think that's important. You have to put yourself in the shoes of that individual.
Absolutely. And on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on, Chuck, because we are going to go to our second and final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Author Chuck Banks is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can go to Amazon, check out all of his book selections. He's got 6 of them up there. His latest, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip. We're going to get into this in hour number 3. I'm very excited to learn about these road trips because I think that's where you get the best hauntings and the best stories is when you go into all these small little hick towns, like where I live. There's so many stories that are hiding and appealing in that nature. So, we're going to get back to author Chuck Banks. He's going the distance with us tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back after this final break.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on SpacedOutRadio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you're seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at SpacedOutRadio.com.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio. And on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we take a look at cults. The Jonestown Massacre. 900 plus people died. It's where the saying, drink the Kool-Aid, comes from. One of the survivors of that, Laura Johnson Cole, is going to be our guest. She drank the Kool-Aid. She survived. She's going to tell us all about Jim Jones and the cult and the cyanide that was put in the Kool-Aid. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Terrasonant. Terrasonant is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets it every single night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, how about on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat in the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where we store our archives, is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Very simple to use. We're on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. You can even give a review on that. And our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read up on the encounter online, as well as you can also watch great videos from Contact TV and UFO Seekers. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, we are talking with paranormal author Charles Banks. His latest book can be found on Amazon. So far, it has a 5-star rating. It is The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip. We're going to bring Chuck back in right now for the final time. Chuck, come on back in.
All right. And again, I think this is the first time, Dave, that I've been down in the haunted basement past the witching hour of 1 a.m. So it's going to be an exciting hour.
Well, we'll see if anything strange happens. That'll be kind of cool. Wouldn't be the first time. Definitely not the last.
Nope.
So, explain to us your latest book, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip. Give us a synopsis of what led to this book.
Well, I was looking at what I could write about, post death to saga, and I thought, what better way to share some of these paranormal experiences than to share, these certain locations in the Midwest. And, basically, my first book, again, The Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, I focus in on Iowa and Missouri. And I really don't dive into Illinois or any of the other states at this point, but I wanted to compile a list of the top 10 most haunted places in Iowa and Missouri. And what I did is I ended up putting 13 in the book. Basically there was a tie for 10th, I believe. But it's a mixture. I mean, there are still some of those normal ones that you would see on a list, like the Villisca Axe Murder House, and certain places like that. But what I prided myself on this one is that I put in some new entries and some new places that people, may not have even heard about. And this gives them an opportunity to go visit these sites and to share that information for themselves. And what's interesting is all of these places I visited myself. So not only do I give you a personal synopsis or a synopsis of this haunted location, but I also give you the history involved in it as well. And I think that that's what's really made this book my strongest yet. And there's a lot of people that have said this book is better than my very first book that people love, Paranormal Experiences, Death, the Final Frontier. They said that this book is very meaningful. And the way I write is I always like to write like we're sitting around the table and we're shooting shop and we're discussing. And that's always worked for me. And the readers, I'm getting a lot of reviews that are really good on this one. They say it's the best book yet.
So take us through some of these stories as you started off in Iowa, because I go back to Field of Dreams, where nothing ever happens in Iowa, except if you build it, they will come.
Oh, buddy, the Edinburgh Manor in Monticello, Iowa, is fairly close to the Field of Dreams, so I'll start there. This was the spot that we actually, when I was writing the book, the reason I was so intrigued was because of the history of it. There was a poor farm. It was a place for the crazies, so to speak, or whatever. It was an insane asylum, and it had a very old cemetery, across the street. So we stopped at that cemetery because I'm kind of a cemetery enthusiast, and I'm taking a look and I'm seeing that a lot of the people at the poor farm were buried within this vicinity. And we actually went up. I was with my wife. We actually took a day trip, and we went to the Field of Dreams that day, actually. And we stopped on the way through, and I didn't get a chance to, do a big investigation on it. But we stopped, and I'm looking down in the basement, and I'm like, I go back to my wife, and she said, "I'll go back and look, you big," and she called me a pussy. Anyway, pussycat. Well, we'll say that for radio. But I was like dumbfounded that she would do that to me. But I had the opportunity, Dave, to investigate this with Short Bus Paranormal with Nick and Sue this early winter, like in January. And man, did I have some experiences in that place that would curl your hair. The dark inside this dark building actually got darker in certain regions. The cold. The feeling as if you're being touched, and they had like this the XLS cam, and as I was feeling touched and these beings were around me, they were getting evidence, and they had that video that they taped on it, and it was really quite an interesting experience. Well, we were actually doing an SB11 down in the basement, and immediately this voice came through that wasn't so nice and said, "Bill's back." Well, for those that don't know my past, anyway, there was a spirit called Bill that seemed to follow us from house to house. So I ended up having some experiences in the house, after that visit. So it was definitely very interesting. And the Edinburgh Manor is definitely in the top 10. You get a chance, take a look. I do know that they're having a SuperCon there, I believe, in the first weekend in May. But that's merely one of a few for our schoolhouse. I've been there several times, done several events. I actually saw a 7-foot tall shadow figure actually get all the way in my face, Dave, and it scared the crap out of me. I've had a lot of those experiences. I share a lot of, other folks' experiences there as well. But there's a new place in Mendota, Missouri, in the extreme northeastern portion of Missouri. This place is insane. Over there's actually a tunnel. And the first time that I went there, I actually got some pictures. And on the ground, it said, and I can't remember for sure what it said, but it's like something about Satan is within us all. And in the pentagram, Dave, there was burnt offerings. So it's a hotbed for satanic activity, which is not good. There's the story of the headless woman in white. My youngest daughter, when I took her there one time, she actually saw this headless woman in white. And looking back at the history, I found that there was a train accident, in the early 1900s that took the lives of around 120 individuals. And there's also an old dilapidated graveyard up there with the stones broken that go all the way back to 1818. So there's several locations, around Iowa and Missouri. And I will tell you that Iowa and Missouri are extremely active places. It's not just if you build it, they will come. It's if you build on me, I'm going to hunt your ass.
Why do you think that is? Because Iowa is known as a farming state. What happened there to create such paranormal activity, do you believe?
If you look back historically speaking, and you see when the Mormons started to trek west, as they went to Salt Lake City, you have several different Mormon areas, and there's actually some spots here in southern Iowa, where the Mormons were actually murdered in certain degrees, historically speaking. There's also you look back in history, the Sac and the Fox Native Americans. They're the Meskwaki now, the Meskwaki Nation. You had Chief Wapello, Chief Keokuk, Chief Black Sock, Bigfoot, Appanoose, and there was a lot of Native American, fighting for land in this area. And it's also, there are a lot of ley lines in the area as well. So it's prime picking for that type of activity. I'm not sure why.
Do you think it has a lot to do with the religious side, or maybe just a hard-working community? Because up here, a hard-working state, because up here in Canada, the prairie provinces, which is Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, are extremely haunted as well. And they're all major farming communities, besides the epicenters, which have become like the capitals. And the metropolises, like in Alberta, you have Calgary and Edmonton, you have Regina and Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, and you have Winnipeg and Manitoba. However, you go north, there was gold, there was mining, there was diamonds, there was absolutely everything that really was much like the wild, wild west that you saw down in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, California. So do you see a lot of that farming nature coming through where maybe people who worked hard, who didn't have time for BS, may be sticking around?
Perhaps. And you also see that, we were a heavy coal mining, region as well. And you had different ethnicities that actually came into the, to the area, like, a Croatian, Italian, Irish, it's very, very high in that nature. So there were instances, of ethnic backlash. There was a KKK movement actually in, throughout Iowa, to push the Catholics and the Irish and the Italians and whatnot away. So there was a violent feature to it. But as far as the farming and the working, I can see where some of that would take place. But Iowa has a darker side that not a lot of people, might know.
Let's head to your book here for a second and tell us about the Mason in Bentonsport, Iowa.
Ooh, you know what? The Mason Inn in Bentonsport, Iowa is actually up for sale, and they are asking $450,000 for this prime real estate, which obviously I don't have enough, so I can't purchase it. But it's one of those great places, and to be perfectly honest, I had no idea that it was even a haunted location. Okay, and we actually went into Bentonsport. It's a small community, and there's these beautiful. These beautiful little quaint shops and stuff like that you can get things. And, there's even some new age shops in that region. And, we were down there and we were taking a look at things. And, I being a history buff, I wanted the history of Bentonsport. So I asked the lady at one of the shops. She said it's down at the Mason Inn. So we, my daughter and I, we marched down there and we go in and we asked for that, and the lady, wonderful lady, gave us the history of Bentonsport, and my daughter turned white as a sheet, Dave, and she, I knew something was going on. Of course, I didn't see it, but we went out and I said, "What happened?" And she says, Dad, I saw a lady in white at the top of those stairs. And then as I started investigating the history of the Mason Inn, I found that there are over 6 ghosts that call this place home, and that one of them is most notoriously seen as the woman in white. So, that was clarification for me. I wasn't going to doubt my daughter. I knew she had abilities, beyond anything that I could even possibly imagine at that point. And, we was able to look into that. And then I found out that, they do have, like paranormal nights and things like that, or psychic nights. I haven't done any of those yet, but maybe in the future.
So what's the story behind the lady in white?
Well, there was an older lady in her early 60s that actually passed away in the end. And I think that she was, one of the former owners. And, she shows up in white, quite a bit. That was one of her favorite colors. But she tends to hang out, I believe, in the room 2 on the second floor. And I'm not sure whether it's room 2 or whether it's 22 or something like that. But no, she tends to hang out there and greets people on their way in. So it blows your mind when you read these stories, about other people's experiences with those, and then have validation, from your own family.
So why does she walk the halls? Did she work there? Did she live there? I know up here a lot of the times when we have women around old hotels, it's because those hotels might be 100+ years old, where during the gold rush in the late 1800s to early 1900s, they were pretty much, trapped there as prostitutes.
It's one of those things where, she had to. I believe that she had something to do with former ownership, and I'm trying to look through here. And is it okay if I read a little bit on page 40?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. The Mason House Inn is a 5-bed and breakfast in the heart of the Midwest, first built to serve steamboat travelers 168 years ago. Today, the tradition continues with the hosts, the Hansons. Okay. It was originally called the Ashland House. It was built in 1846 and was owned by William Robinson. It was built as a hotel to serve the steamboat travelers going from St. Louis to Fort Des Moines to Fort Dodge on the Des Moines River. It was built by Mormon craftsmen from Nauvoo, Illinois, who stayed in Bentonsport for several years, working and gathering supplies before making their trek westward to Salt Lake City, Utah. Several of the brick buildings still in use here in Bentonsport were built by these craftsmen. In 1857, the Ashland House was purchased by Lewis Mason and his wife Nancy. They changed the name to the Phoenix Hotel, but the townspeople called the place the Mason's House, and the name stayed. It was Nancy who started the tradition of a cookie jar in every room, and they say that Nancy still resides as the lady in white.
Very interesting indeed. Very interesting. Let's get to the birthday Giblin Bridge.
Oh man, yeah. This one, this story is really quite remarkable, because this story, I believe is what really ramps me up as far as my abilities and the haunting in general that I dealt with. I visited. I found out that it was a location in Iowa, just south of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, and it was pretty difficult to find. But once we found the area, Dave, I'm snapping pictures, and I get this huge line of energy that's down below it, and and I felt something walk up on me. But I thought that I was still taking pictures, and I hit the video, and in that 2-second video, there's an EVP, Class A EVP, that comes out that says the death is all around, or something like that. I had psychic medium Freddie Rivera, look at it and whatnot. But it wasn't 2 weeks later that I actually experienced the 3 knocks in the basement. around 3:15 a.m. in the morning. And, basically, things got crazy. But when I went there the third time, I had a visitation from this beautiful woman in white in what appeared to be like a wedding dress or something of that nature. And she was beautiful, man. Her eyes were beautiful. And then as beautiful as she was, she changed into the darkest, nastiest. Her fingernails got long and pointy, black. Her eyes changed to black. Color of her dress changed as well. But after doing some digging on this particular site, Giblin Bridge, I found out that there was a woman in her late 20s. She was actually having an affair with a doctor in the region, and she actually hung herself from that bridge. And so when you find out the historical nature of those things, it blows you away.
Was there a lot of suicides on that bridge?
One for sure. One for sure. With the woman in the late 20s that had the affair with the local doctor in the town of Mount Pleasant. But I can't validate whether or not there's been any other suicides in that region. But there have been several crashes and deaths within that particular spot in the highway.
Now, describe the bridge for us. Is it high up off the ground? Is it a 2-lane, 4-lane bridge? What makes it so deadly?
Well, originally it was just a 2-lane bridge, but today it sets in a spot. The old bridge has since been taken down. It's actually along a 4-lane stretch of road, but it's just off, kind of on the old highway segment. You know how you see like these new 4 lanes that are coming in. And then you had an old highway segment, and then it's in that old highway segment where she hung herself. But a lot of the wrecks they take place in this area. And what's interesting, Dave, is it's a pretty straight line. It's not like that. There's huge corners or hills to take place there.
Is it just the energy around there that makes it feel so? How can we put it? Evil or demented in a way?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up too, because if you look at where Giblin Bridge is located, and then you go over let's say 25 miles on the Skunk River, over in towards Burlington, there's a place called Witch's Grave that's kind of on that grade. It's not in my book, but I'll be writing about that soon. And if you go all the way across the state, Dave, it's interesting that they pretty much connect with the Villisca Axe Murder House, the Malvern Mansion in Malvern, Iowa. It's interesting, but on that gradient or that degree or whatever, there's so many things, and even Mars Hill that I have in my book as well, falls on that gradient line.
So is there still a lot of car accidents reported in that area?
I have been, looking, recently, and I believe in 2017 there was 1 death there. But if you look back, all the way into the 1990s, there have been as many as 6 to 7 fatalities in that particular location.
It's amazing how there always seems to be that one stretch of highway where there are always so many deaths. And it just seems to be so, shockingly different compared to other parts of the highway. We have a couple around here. I think every state or province does. Why do you think certain areas are just that deadly? Do you think there is something paranormal to it, or could it be the landscape or the blind spots, or could it be explained very simply?
You know what? I can't really explain it. If you look at that particular spot and you go over north of Centerville, which would be on that gradient of line 2, there's a spot of the highway that's called Killer Corner. Now, there is kind of a blind spot in that particular region, but man, over the years, I would say since the 60s, over 20 people have died in that particular area, which is interesting to say the least. That something could be drawn there. I mean, it's something, some darker force causing these accidents? I can't answer that, but it is intriguing to see these things taking place in those particular areas. Much like, you look at that cemetery over in Chicago, right? I can't remember the name of it right offhand, but I'm sure one of your listeners will. But there have been a lot of deaths on that highway in that particular region as well.
Let's move on to another chapter, the Mars Hill in Davis County.
Oh boy, that one is very intriguing because that one actually had a really crazy experience with a couple of my friends back in college. But it's an area where people see UFOs. The aspect that you roll over the bridge and you hear some babies crying. It's been proven that devil worship in the 80s and the late 70s, took place in this area. And I found it very intriguing. So we went to just go take a look at it, to see what's going on. And, I think I was probably 20 years old. And, me and my buddy were like, show yourself, blah, blah, blah. We were pretending like we were badasses. And in the distance, Dave, it had to be a lantern from the 1800s. And you can tell the difference. It's floating in midair and it's like chasing us. And we run and get in the car and get the hell out of there. But we had that experience. That one's pretty unique too, and that's right on the gradient line as well. Which there are several locations in southern Iowa, where you can go all the way across the state. It's interesting. I actually did a paper in college, on Mars Hill, and the different regions there, of this growing satanic, ritualistic things that were taking place in the 80s. And I interviewed the sheriff, and he said that several of his deputies had experienced the same light anomaly that myself and my buddy experienced that night. It's crazy.
Once again, you're there. You're obviously checking these places out. What did it feel like energetically?
It felt it felt like strange electric charges. It wasn't colder, it wasn't hotter, but it felt like the air itself was almost electric in nature. Can't really explain it other than that. I look back at the Giblin Bridge, and I hate to go back there, but I just the sickness in my gut, the heavy feeling is, but Mars Hill was different in the fact that it was more electric. It was like the, and of course the whole, the ground's alive, you know what I mean? The trees are alive or whatever, but it's like the whole place was alive.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that there has been UFO activity around there. There's been other types of activities. Has there been cryptids seen in that area as well?
UFOs, as far as Bigfoot has been seen in Lee County and within this area as well. As far as Mars Hill, I mean, they've experienced not only, Bigfoot, but they've experienced, what do they call it? Mothman or something similar to Mothman in that region as well. So it almost makes you wonder whether or not this aspect or this component of, where there are portals or whatever in that region almost makes it, it makes sense that interdimensional beings of all types would be within that region.
How often are people reporting incidents there?
Let's see, as far as Mars Hill, maybe 1-2 a year, which that's quite a bit. You look at southern Iowa, that somebody would be willing to, you know what I'm saying, to bet their reputation on those particular things.
Mm-hmm. Is it a situation, because, to call it Mars Hill, everybody kind of associates the word Mars with things that are a little bit indifferent. The red planet, aliens, UFOs, whatever it may be. Describe the area for us around there. Is it in a forest? Is it in a barren type area?
It's, if you look at southern Iowa in general, it's a little bit hillier. There's you can only get there through a rock road. So it's hilly. There's lots of trees around, and lots of prairie grass. And Mars Hill itself it is up on a hill, granted Mars Hill, but so it's much higher than the other the other geographic facets of the area itself. But it's a lot of trees, lots of things. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, to be honest.
So it's another one of those areas where maybe energetically it just translates into strange occurrences.
Absolutely. And a lot of these areas, these smaller locations that are in the book, are within those regions, and there, in actuality, you could actually visit 5 of those locations in my book in one day and do it pretty easily. So they're all pretty close to one another. So I would be interested, to basically dig a little bit deeper to find out whether or not there's some tie-in there. Especially when you look at it, across the barrier at the bottom of the state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who are the main ghosts walking around that bridge?
Giblin Bridge, or are you talking about Mars Hill?
Mars Hill. Sorry, Mars Hill area.
Oh, okay. They say that there's, from a lot of experiences with different people, they say that there are a lot of ghosts of children. Now, I don't know whether I buy that or not, obviously. But like Mothman, if you look at cryptozoology, the UFOs, a lot of sightings within the region, but there's actually no pinpoint as far as a name, in the region, other than it's extremely active.
Any word as to why people believe in that area that it is mostly haunted by deceased children?
Well, you look back in the early 1900s during the flu pandemic. There's lots of children that are buried in that particular area of the graveyard that passed during the flu pandemic. So I'm guessing that's probably a strong component, or of that.
Let's move on to another chapter of the book. I'm very interested in Edinburgh Manor in Monticello, Iowa.
Now, the Edinburgh Manor is one of those sites, like I said, that if I would have had the opportunity to visit this particular location prior to writing the book, and I did visit it, but I wasn't able to investigate inside of it. It would have been a lot higher up in the book. But this building itself, the building that currently resides on it, was built in 1908. It's rumored to be extremely active. They're dolls that move. They're like rocks thrown, things like that. The Edinburgh Manor was once home to a mental institution where at least 80 people are said to have died. You look back, this area, the Edinburgh area, was originally the county seat of Jones County, established in 1840. There was a poor farm established on the grounds of the manor and was in operation from 1850 to 1910. And at that time, there were 80 documented deaths from that. So that goes up. So you have at least 160 people that died on this current property. So it's definitely very interesting. And an investigation in the early winter of 2017, when it was investigated, there were 2 occurrences where a doll was moved during the overnight investigation. It was at one side of the couch and then it was on the other side. And, after, the investigators actually got together, neither one of them had moved it. So that was pretty interesting. It's one of those components, like I said, when I was at the Edinburgh Manor, man, the darkness, it's always dark when you're investigating unless you have your light on, but the darkness got as dark as I've ever seen a particular location.
Does it just feel evil there, though?
Down in the basement, it does. Down in the basement, for sure. And, utilizing my mediumship, I actually asked, the people I was investigating with, Nick and Sue, if anybody had done any summoning in that basement, and I found out, later that that actually took place from one of the investigative crew that was within there. And this is a location where, that Zach Bagans has investigated. A lot of folks have investigated this particular, place. And I tell you what, there was one point, man, where I was in the second floor, and I was down on the girls' wing, and it was like my equilibrium was out of balance, out of whack, and I got dizzy, and I felt like somebody was punching me in the ribs, and I pulled up my shirt, and lo and behold, there was knuckle marks on the ribs. So this is an extremely active location. I would say if you're going to go to this particular location, you definitely have to be definitely protect yourself and make sure you got a good group that's working with you.
So do you think it was some sort of Spanish flu pandemic that was ripping through there, or disease-ridden area that maybe just wasn't cleaned properly that led to a lot of these deaths?
Well, when you look at when it was a home for the clinically, crazy, and I'm sure that I'm not stating that in a proper fashion, but there were actually lobotomies done, on site. There were several abortions that were completed by supposedly the owner impregnated several women in that wing as well. So there's just a lot of darker stuff associated with this particular spot. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's just from the the Spanish influenza. I would say that this one there were a lot more sinister things involved when you look at the Edinburgh Manor.
Was it a smattering of ghosts all around? Like everywhere you go, it's a haunted place, whether it's the yard, the home, or is this something where there's just relatively few spirits that are still residing?
I would say, Dave, that there's at least 20 to 25 spirits that still haunt the grounds of the Edinburgh Manor, and it's got to be one of the most haunted locations, in the Midwest or in Iowa for that matter.
When did the asylum shut down?
Let's see. It actually shut down, I believe, I have to think here, in 2010. So in August of 2010. And what's interesting is the reason, that's right on the tip of my tongue with August 10th is that the calendars, it's like everyone just kind of left. And there's personal belongings still left in the rooms. There's still actual pill bottles, in the area where they would get medicine and those sorts of things. I mean, it's quite remarkable. It's like people just left and left a lot of their belongings behind.
Is it one of those places, Chuck, where people are drawn to it and they just don't know why? They just feel that they need to go up there because it's just one of those weird pieces of history?
Yeah. There are a lot of people that visit it on a yearly basis, I believe, for that matter. And, the wonderful lady that owns it, she lives in Cedar Rapids, and, they have day tours, and then they'll have overnight investigations. But, man, it's actually booked up, I believe, booked solid for the next 6 to 8 months. Now, as far as me, I felt kind of drawn to this location just for a historical standpoint. And it was one of those road trips where I had no idea that this place was haunted. It wasn't even on my radar. I just thought, okay, the Edinburgh Manor, this sounds like a cool place to go take a look when my wife and I were taking a road trip. And lo and behold, I find one of the most haunted jewels that I've ever experienced. And then when I was able to go back up and investigate it with Nick and Sue with Short Bus Paranormal, it was amazing. It was amazing to investigate such a haunted location because there at the end of the day, you can go to a lot of places. I went to Villisca and did an overnight in June, I believe, 2014, with my daughter, and we had experiences, but nothing like this Edinburgh Manor. It blew me away.
Mm-hmm. Out of all the places that you investigated for this book, the Midwest Paranormal Road Trip, are all of these places investigated by paranormal teams? And if not, how do many of them treat the paranormal? Is it something that they know the ghosts are there, but they really don't care for paranormal teams coming on in, or are they very open-armed about it?
It's it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, if you're going to go to Mars Hill, Mendota, Dumas, or those places, you want to make sure that you contact the local law enforcement just to let them know that you're around, because they would consider it maybe suspicious because of the amount of drug activity that you see in this area or this region. But as far as like the Edinburgh Manor, the Malvern Manor, Villisca, all of those locations, those are locations that actually, they sell out their time and, like overnight investigations, daytime stuff, so you can go there. But those cost some money. But, it's kind of a mix. In our location, people might roll their eyes and say, "Oh, you're a ghost hunter, huh?" Where you say, "No, we're paranormal investigators," and they kind of roll their eyes, but they don't really look at you as silly or not want those things. But like at Farrar, up around Des Moines, Iowa, that's a location that's actually owned by Nancy and Jim, and they tend to get those people that try to tear stuff up and things like that. So it makes it bad for investigators in general. But for the most part, these are all pretty easy locations to find. They're you're able to investigate them. You just have to make sure that you contact the proper folks.
So there is some wishy-washiness towards people involved in the paranormal there then, but a lot of these places, are they capitalizing financially off of paranormal teams coming on in there?
There are two locations, in the list that definitely capitalize financially, off of, guests and investigators, whereas, there are roughly 10 spots, though, that it's as far as getting in, it's not a real financial situation. They're not really in it for the money. They're more in it for hey, give us a donation so we can restore and keep the place going.
All right, let's move on here to another chapter of your book, and I think everybody has seen or heard of this place, the Iowa State Penitentiary. And penitentiaries have a long list of paranormal activity, and this is the first of two penitentiaries that you actually have chapters on in the Midwest Paranormal Road Trip.
Yes, the Iowa State Penitentiary is one of those penitentiaries that actually just closed down partially. There's still two active cells that they have folks that are kind of medium security within there, so it's not been opened up totally, for investigations of the public, but we have been able to to get in and take a look at it. It was built in 1839. It's been home for inmates since the United States was merely 57 years old, so this is a very old penitentiary. Unexplainable moan sounds, feeling strange, seeing apparitions, physical attacks by unseen entities on prison guards. This place is one of those things. And in 1839, inmates actually built the first cell block, and it's called Cell Block 17. And apparently, there's a ghost that haunts the upper ranges of the cell block, and guards, would see apparitions move through the yard at night in those areas. Federal executions actually were carried out in a location of the Iowa State Penitentiary until 1965. 46 men were all hanged outside the corridor, and in that region, is basically just a few blocks down from where Fort Madison residence was, and some of the experiences that we that we had in that general region. It's very it's cold, it's damp, it's dark, and you can just feel, you can feel the whole penitentiary kind of enclose your very being at times. I mean, it's a lot, and again, it could be a wide range of both residual and intelligent hauntings that are in that region. I mean, there's got to be both.
Is there a lot of spirit activity there that revolves around just the prisoners, or are we seeing prison guards there as well?
Lots of prison guards, have said that they have experienced, certain areas. Like, for example, down in, where solitary confinement is located at the bottom base of the old region. It's still one of the the sites that was built in 1839. And there are guards that say that, they've been watched, pushed against the wall, and many other things. But, it's one of those things where you've had a mix of both prisoners and guards experiencing these experiences, which kind of validates it all the more.
So what kind of spirits are these guards seeing, and is it screwing up their jobs from keeping the prisoners and the public safe?
Well, they see like darker shadow manifestations, moans, like rattling of the, of like the outside of the, the jail itself, the bars, and today in that particular area where most of these hauntings reside in the Iowa State Penitentiary, there's no longer inmates there, nor guards. So, they are going to be offering tours for paranormal enthusiasts, and I'm hoping to get in with an actual group, in the early part of 2018 here, to get into it, which is going to be exciting to basically get more validation when it comes to the haunting in the area.
So let's switch prisons then. Let's go over to Missouri State Penitentiary. Is it pretty much the exact same thing that's happening there?
I would tend to say that it would be very similar. Now, what's interesting about the Missouri State Pen is, Benji Gertis, a great friend of mine who's also a Ministers of the Haunted, stated that in one of the cell blocks where it was highly African American in that general vicinity, they were actually getting things on EVP saying, "I want some chicken." And I mean no disrespect when I say, any of this stuff, because this is directly from the book. But a lot of animosity. I had a picture of my son in actually one of these cells. And it was actually Firebug Johnson's cell, and this guy was notorious for setting this place on fire. And if you've been out in solitary confinement where Firebug Johnson actually resided for over 12 years, you can still smell the smoke. It's crazy. And there's no fire or no potential, for a fire down in that region. But I took a picture of this John B. Johnson, this Firebug, in his cell. And, I took a picture of my son, and it's distorted. And I have that in the book as well. But, man, you want to talk about, a pretty crazy place. I mean, you look at they still have the old gas chamber, for this penitentiary, and it's crazy. Crazy active, Dave. I would recommend, everybody to go take a look at both those penitentiaries, because you're going to have experiences there. Some of them good, some of them not so good, but you're going to have an experience there if, bring a skeptic.
A lot of these prisons all had death row inmates. Are those some of the most haunted areas in the prisons that we're finding?
Well, either that location, like the block where where they would be in the days before execution, or in solitary confinement is what I'm seeing in a lot of these prisons that I've been investigating, over the past couple of years.
How do the guards react when they have something paranormal like this happen?
Well, there's a lot of times where they kind of keep it to themselves, in a fear of any, their compadres, giving them a hard time. But there are a lot of those that step up and, that they actually write them down in the logs in those particular areas, which makes it easier, for folks like us to go back and check the history of these things, to take a look. But for the most part, now the Missouri State Pen has been shut down for quite a while. So, I was able to get a tour from one of the old prison guards that actually talked about some of his personal experiences, which I found quite remarkable. And then, the Iowa State Penitentiary is all but shut down. But, just talking to these old guards, it's interesting to hear these stories from these great individuals.
Were they believers?
You know what? I got a really good friend of mine that I'll call Pat. And Pat was as skeptical as they come. Okay, and he was he was pretty set in his ways. And you know what? He had some experiences that he cannot. He's still trying to find out the reason for all this. To take a look. But today he's much more of a believer than he was. Before he started working at the Iowa State Penitentiary. It's interesting.
No kidding. I don't know if I could work on a daily basis like that. Like, I'm pretty good at the paranormal, and I got a lot of weird stuff that happens around my house. But, I mean, to go into a haunted workplace or facility on a daily basis, I did that once in my career. Early on in my life, when I was a hockey instructor, the rink that I worked at was completely haunted. And it scared me being there. I could just imagine. I mean, on one side, you got inmates that'll kill you for a quarter, and on the next side, you have a bunch of evil ghosts running around who would probably love to kill you from the other side.
Yes. It's crazy. It's crazy when you see that kind of because normally the spirit's going to be the way they were in life, and most of those folks, but let's just take that. Most of them are guilty, so most of them are going to be like that, not only in life but also in death. Yeah, it's crazy.
Chuck, we're starting to wind down here. We're down to our final minute with you. I would love it if you took the time to let people know about your 6 books, where they can find them, and your radio show.
Absolutely. If you want, just follow me, Charles Anthony, on Facebook or on Twitter, ParaX the show, and take a look. If you type in Amazon, type in Charles Banks, author. Death the Saga or the Midwest Paranormal Road Trip. You can take a look at my books. But if you contact me via Facebook on Messenger, okay, I will sign that book and I will mail it to you. So and I do get more of the proceeds when it comes to that. You can follow us. Also BeyondTheLightNetwork.com. Okay, BeyondTheLightNetwork.com. We run shows 4 days a week, and my show. I run every Sunday night from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central. Dave, it's been a pleasure to come back on Spaced Out Radio, and I just want to say you have some great listeners. You have a great thing going, and I love you, brother.
Thank you, brother. We have much love and admiration for you as well. Chuck, you hold on. I got to wrap this thing up. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. We absolutely love Mr. B, the number 11 guitarist in the world. Yes, he is that good. Tomorrow night on the program, we go where we've never gone before. We're going to talk about the Jonestown Massacre down in Ghana in the late 1970s, survivor from that event, Laura Johnson-Cole is here to tell her story about what happened. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. I want to remind you that we would really appreciate your help sharing the post or donation. Go to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. 100% of the donations help to rebuild the Spaced Out Radio studios as we're going terrestrial, my friends. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is listening at home, listening in their vehicles, listening at work, wherever you may be. But most of all, I want to say thank you to those listening in at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, in the SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook, and on Spreaker, chatting the night away from us. You guys make it so much fun. Thank you for everything you do, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good night.